I still remember the exact moment the security guard stepped toward me, his face serious, his eyes full of suspicion. I was standing near one of the stores, just doing what millions of people do every day, shopping, browsing, living my life. But suddenly in an instant, everything changed. A white woman had just called security on me. Me, for nothing, for simply being there. I heard her voice before I saw her, sharp and low, speaking to someone nearby, filled with doubt and accusation. I couldn't believe it at first. Why would she call security on me? What possible reason could there be? I was calm, polite, paying like any other customer. But apparently to her, I didn't belong. The guard's footsteps grew louder as he came closer. I could feel the eyes of the people around me, curious, uncertain, some judging, some silent. My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Can I help you?" I asked. He looked at me like I was a stranger, or worse, a problem. "Ma'am, we had a call about suspicious activity." I was stunned. Suspicious activity. I'm a shopper, just like anyone else. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tell everyone this was wrong, but all I could do was stand there quietly. Because sometimes, no matter how strong you are inside, the world can make you feel small in a blink. What would you do if you were accused for simply being yourself? If you were seen as a threat for nothing more than your skin, for your presence? That moment changed everything. It shook me in ways I never expected, and what happened next? Well, it stunned everyone there into silence. Before that day, before the guard approached me, I want you to know who I really am. Because the truth behind what happened isn't just about a moment of misunderstanding, it's about a lifetime of hard work, pride, and dreams. I'm a Black woman, a business owner, and believe it or not, the owner of that mall where it all happened. Yes, the very place where I was treated like an intruder, a suspicious stranger. It's hard to explain the irony of that moment, the irony of building something with your own two hands, only to have someone accuse you of not belonging. My journey wasn't easy. I grew up in a neighborhood where people like me were often overlooked, doubted, and underestimated. But I had dreams bigger than any challenge that came my way. I worked countless hours, pouring every ounce of energy into building a life that others said was impossible for someone like me. I started small, a little boutique, a tiny shop that barely made enough to cover rent, but I didn't give up. I learned, adapted, and pushed harder. Over the years, I grew my business. I saved every penny and invested it wisely. I found ways to lift others as I climbed, creating jobs and opportunities for people in my community. Eventually I bought the mall, not just to own a building, but to create a space where everyone, no matter their race, background, or story, could feel safe and welcome. A place where families could shop without fear, where local businesses could grow, and where diversity was celebrated. The mall has become a heartbeat of our community, a symbol of what hard work and determination can build. But that day, when a woman saw me and called security, it felt like all that hard work was ignored. I was reduced to a suspicion, a misunderstanding born from assumptions and fear. That's why this story isn't just about what happened that day. It's about the layers beneath, the struggle, the dreams, and the reality of living in a world where appearances still matter more than truth. That day started like any other. I arrived at the mall early in the morning, feeling proud as always when I stepped inside the place I had built from the ground up. I was heading to one of the shops to pick up a few things. A little break from the busy schedule running a mall wasn't something I often got to enjoy, but this time I thought, why not? Just a quick visit, no rush, no pressure. As I walked through the corridors, greeting a few familiar faces, I felt comfortable, at home. The mall was bustling with people, families, teenagers, elderly couples, all enjoying their day. Everything was normal, peaceful. Then I noticed her, a white woman standing near one of the store entrances. She was looking at me, staring, really, but not in a way that felt friendly or even curious. It was a cold, suspicious look, the kind that slices through your confidence like a knife. I tried to ignore it, told myself maybe she just wasn't having a good day. But then she whispered something to her friends, glancing back at me as if I was the problem they needed to watch out for. I kept moving, hoping she would just leave me alone, but the whispers grew louder, the stares more intense. Suddenly I heard her pull out her phone and dial. The word security floated through the air, sharp and clear. My heart stopped for a moment. Was this really happening? Was she really calling security on me, on the mall owner, for no reason at all? I felt a rush of disbelief. How could this be happening in my own mall, on a day that should have been simple and quiet? Within minutes, 2 security guards appeared, their expressions serious. They approached me cautiously, eyes scanning me as if I were some kind of threat. "Ma'am, we received a report about suspicious activity. Can you tell us what you're doing here?" one of them asked. I blinked, struggling to keep my voice calm. "I'm the owner of this mall, I'm just visiting a store." The guard didn't believe me, his eyes narrowed. "Do you have ID or anything to prove that?" The humiliation hit me like a wave. Here I was, trying to explain who I am, only to be doubted and questioned in my own space. People nearby had started to watch, whispering among themselves. I could feel their judgment, their curiosity, their disbelief. I wanted to say something sharp, to shout, but the anger mixed with sadness made my throat tight. I wanted to disappear, to vanish from this embarrassing moment, where assumptions about my skin color had painted me as a suspect. As the guards kept questioning me, I thought about how deeply unfair it was to be treated this way, not because of anything I did, but because of who I am. A black woman, simply existing, was enough to cause suspicion. It was a crushing feeling, shock that this could happen so casually, anger at the ignorance and fear that fueled it, and sadness because it reminded me how far we still have to go. What hurt the most was knowing that this woman didn't even try to see me as a person. She saw only a stereotype, a threat in her mind, and acted without a second thought. I stood there silent but strong, hoping that somehow, this painful moment would end soon. But deep down, I knew it was only the beginning of a story that needed to be told. The moment I told the security guards I was the mall owner, their faces barely changed. They looked at me with doubt, like I was playing some kind of game. I expected disbelief, that much was no surprise, but I was calm. I had to be. After all, this was my mall. I knew every corner, every store, every employee. This wasn't a misunderstanding I could let slide. "Can you please show some ID, ma'am?" one of the guards insisted, still skeptical. I reached into my bag and pulled out my wallet. I handed over my driver's license, business cards, and even the mall's official documents stored on my phone. Nothing seemed to convince them. Instead, they said they had to check with management and verify my claim. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. The whole situation was surreal. Here I was, a black woman trying to prove her identity in a place she owned, and no one believed me. They walked away to make calls, and I was left standing there, feeling every eye in the mall on me. The weight of humiliation was heavy. I wasn't just embarrassed for myself, I was embarrassed for all the people who had been judged and doubted simply because of their skin color. Then something unexpected happened. One of the guards came back, but not alone. A woman in a sharp suit, looking serious and professional, approached. It was the mall manager, or so I thought. She looked directly at me, eyes scanning every detail. Then, without saying a word, she pulled up a file on her tablet. As she scrolled through the documents, her face changed. The suspicion and doubt melted into surprise, then something close to shame. "Is this really you?" she asked quietly, almost not wanting to believe it. I nodded, voice steady but soft. "Yes, I'm the owner." The room went quiet. The white woman who had called security was still nearby, clutching her purse tightly, her face pale. I could see the shift in her expression from confidence to confusion, and finally to shame. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. The guards exchanged awkward glances, suddenly unsure of themselves. Some of the bystanders who had gathered whispered quietly, some shaking their heads in disbelief. For a moment, the mall felt different. The tension hung heavy, but something else was in the air, something powerful. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication, because the truth was finally clear. I wasn't a threat, I was not a suspicious stranger, I was the very person who had poured her heart and soul into this place. Sadness, because it took being questioned and humiliated to make that clear. I looked at the white woman, my voice calm but firm. "I hope you understand how hurtful that was." She didn't answer, She just nodded slightly, still avoiding my gaze. I wanted to believe she was sorry, not just for me, but for the unfair assumptions she had made, but even if she wasn't, I knew something had changed. The silence, the shame in her eyes, it was a crack in the wall of ignorance. The security guards, now more respectful, apologized quietly, and the crowd slowly dispersed. But the moment stayed with me. It was a reminder of the cost of prejudice, how it can shake even the strongest person to their core, how it can make you question yourself, your place, your worth, and yet it was also a reminder of resilience, the power to stand tall, speak truth, and hold on to dignity, even when the world tries to deny it. That confrontation was painful. Yes, but it was also necessary. It opened eyes, challenged assumptions, and made sure the story of what really happened wouldn't be forgotten. After everything settled, I found myself alone in a quiet corner of the mall, trying to catch my breath, not just physically, but emotionally. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the shock, or the humiliation of being wrongly accused in front of strangers. It was the deeper hurt, the kind that sinks into your soul when you realize how deeply prejudice still lives in the world around you. For a moment, I questioned myself. Why did this happen? Why, despite all I've built, all I've achieved, was I still seen through the lens of suspicion simply because of my skin color? It was a painful question with no easy answer. I thought about the hundreds of people who walk through this mall every day, families, workers, shoppers, and how many might have felt the sting of unfair judgment like I did. How many had been doubted or watched closely, not because of anything they did, but because of how others saw them. It was a harsh reminder that no matter how progressive a place may seem, biases can still hide in the shadows, ready to surface when least expected. But I also realized something important. I had a choice in how I responded to this moment. I could let it break me, I could let the humiliation turn into anger that consumed me, or I could use it as fuel to keep pushing forward, not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been judged unfairly. So I chose strength. I chose forgiveness, not because what happened was okay, but because holding on to anger would only weigh me down. Forgiveness was a way to reclaim my power, to refuse to let ignorance define my story. In the days that followed, I spoke with my staff. They were shocked, saddened, but also proud of how I handled the situation. We talked about how important it is to support each other, to speak up against injustice whenever it happens. I also reached out to members of the community, friends, neighbors, local business owners. Many shared their own stories of being misunderstood or mistrusted. It became clear that this wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of a much larger problem that needs attention. And yes, I even spoke with the white woman who called security. It was not an easy conversation. There was awkwardness, silence, and moments when words felt impossible. But I wanted to understand her, why she reacted that way, what fears or assumptions led to that call. She admitted she was wrong. She said she never imagined the truth would be so different from what she assumed. There was no excuse for her actions, she said, only a hope to learn and do better. That conversation didn't erase the hurt, but it was a start. A step toward awareness and empathy, two things we desperately need more of in this world. This experience taught me that assumptions and biases aren't always loud or obvious. Sometimes they hide in everyday moments, quick judgments, whispered doubts, silent stares. But if we're willing to face them honestly, to talk about them openly, we can challenge those assumptions and create change. I want everyone listening to know this: awareness is the first step. Empathy is the next. And from there, we can build a future where no one is judged by the color of their skin, or where they come from, but by the content of their character. This is why I'm sharing my story, not to dwell on pain, but to shine a light on truth. To remind us all that behind every face is a human being deserving of respect and dignity, and that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in silence, with quiet strength. I want to leave you with this: no matter who you are or where you come from, standing strong in the face of prejudice is one of the bravest things you can do. It's not easy, it takes courage, patience, and sometimes a quiet kind of strength that only you know you have inside. We all carry biases, Some we recognize, others we don't. But the important part is to be willing to look honestly at those biases, how they shape the way we see people, how they influence the way we treat others. It's not about blaming ourselves, but about learning and growing. Kindness and understanding are powerful tools. When we choose to listen before judging, to seek truth instead of assuming, we create space for respect and dignity. And when we confront injustice, whether it's big or small, with calm and truth, we take back control of our own story. The experience I shared with you today wasn't just about me, it's about all of us. About recognizing that behind every face is a story, a life filled with dreams, struggles, and hopes. And that no one should ever have to prove their worth simply by existing. If this story touched you, if it made you think or feel, please like this video. Your support helps us share more stories that matter. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you've experienced something similar, or maybe this opened your eyes in a new way. Sharing our stories is how we build understanding. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories told with honesty and heart. And if you feel moved to do so, please share this video. The more people who hear it, the closer we get to a world where fairness and empathy come first. Let's keep this conversation going, with respect, openness, and a genuine desire to learn from one another. Because change begins when we listen, when we reflect, and when we act. Thank you for taking the time to hear my story. Together we can make a difference.